And a very warm welcome to the LBC Book Club. We're broadcasting to you tonight live from Sydney, where it is, unbelievably, 6 o'clock in the morning. Well, 4 minutes past 6, 4 minutes past 9, where you're listening, I imagine. I'm joined in the studio by two marvellous authors, Kerri Sackville, who's written a book called When My Husband Does the Dishes, a memoir of marriage and motherhood. She actually wanted to call it When My Husband Does the Dishes, brackets, He Wants Sex, but the publishers wouldn't let her do that for some unfathomable reason, but there we go. And I'm also joined by Mark Dapin, who's here. He's written a book called Strange Country, which is all about his travels around Australia. He's actually English. How long have you lived here, Mark?
About 22 years.
And you do sound a bit Aussie, it has to be said.
I've got the nationality. I have the passport.
You have the passport. Well, it's really good.
He sounds totally British to me, actually.
Really? And he's also written a new novel called King of the Cross.
That's right, yeah. It's a crime novel set in King's Cross, which is the place all backpackers come to in their first year in Australia.
And it's organised crime.
It's a story of a crime lord called Jake Mendoza, his rise and fall as told to somebody who he believes to be a journalist, but turns out, in a twist that I will not reveal on the radio, even though I am doing it because it's 6 o'clock in the morning and I can't get my thoughts straight, to be someone other.
Well, we're very grateful to you both for getting up at such an ungodly hour to come and talk to us about your books.
I may have forgotten to say that my book won an Ed Kelly Award for first crime fiction.
Well, then we're delighted it did. Now, unfortunately, I know your book, Kerri, is not available on Amazon, which is unbelievable because I tried to look it up.
No.
So how?
It's all very political.
I mean, I think by the end,
it's available on Amazon here in Australia, but not currently.
No. Well, by the end of this hour, I think a lot of the people listening are going to want to buy all of your books. So you're going to have to tell us where they can buy the books from. So we'll store that up for a bit later. Let's start off with you. Now, just describe the book in your own words in 30 seconds.
In 30 seconds. This book is a very, very honest memoir of marriage and motherhood. I basically got sick of reading books that talked about the great fairy tale that is falling in love and people walking off happily into the sunset together. I was far more interested in what happens after you've been living in the sunset, for 150 years with the same person and picking up their boxer shorts off the floor and seeing them naked every single day, for hundreds and hundreds of years and making small people with them who also leave their undies on the floor. So I wrote a book about my life and describing all the intricate, mundane details of, sex with the same person forever and a day and fighting and raising children and having no idea how to discipline them and feeding them Frankfurts every day for a week and so on and so forth.
Because you do come across as what J.R. Ewing would have called Sue Ellen, as an unfit mother.
Oh, completely, and I make no secret of that. This is not an aspirational book. This is not a book that mothers will read and think, yes, this is how I can be a better parent and a better mother. This is a book that
no, but most mothers will read this and think that's me.
Exactly. This is a book that I intended for women to be able to read and men to read and think, yes, this is exactly how it is. It may not be the ideal, but this is what it's really like. Well, you see,
I don't have children, and I read it, and afterwards I thought, thank God I never had any.
That's a common reaction.
Because I would be like you.
But no, I hope that what's come through and what I think has come through is how crazily I love my kids and my husband, but that doesn't mean that it's not really hard and full of mistakes and full of drudgery. And, you have these wonderful moments where, you stare into their eyes and you feel this overwhelming joy and pride. And then the next minute you're making school lunches and arguing over, putting their socks away. And so it's a combination of kind of 95% drudgery and 5% immense bliss. Maybe 3% immense bliss.
In the last hour of the programme, we were talking about missing people, and we had a couple of callers, or in fact, one of the last callers in the hour said she had lost her child in a supermarket for 15 minutes and described the agonies that she went through.
Oh,
now, I know you've described something vaguely similar in your book where you lost your child on a beach.
Yeah, I lost my daughter, my middle child, on Bondi Beach. And if anyone knows Bondi Beach, and if you don't, it's a very long, very, very busy stretch of beach, and in summer it is just packed with all sorts of people. And my daughter has a tendency to wander, And, I turned my head for 1 minute and she was gone. And there I was with my toddler under my arm. Well, she was actually a baby then. My husband running off in one direction, my son in another, scouring the beach, yelling. And in fact, we found her sitting very happily and very content on an old man's knee, a strange old man's knee.
And you said? And
I grabbed her back and started screaming at her, as you do.
I would have been screaming at him.
Well, he was kind of looking after her, and I don't think he meant any harm. But it was a completely traumatic experience, and your gut reaction is incredible relief, and then you turn that relief into fury and start yelling at your child. He had no intentions of abducting her. He was just kind of looking after her because her really, really slack mother had let her out of her sight.
Do you think that probably virtually every mother goes through that, though? Because, I mean, you cannot keep your eyes on your children the whole time, can you?
Absolutely, and I'm very aware of that, and the number of times, honestly, because I spent a lot of time in our local Westfield, which is our shopping mall, kind of wandering around with the kids, as you do on a rainy day to try and keep them occupied. Let's go to the supermarket. That'll be fun. We can buy milk and bread, and I'll buy you a chocolate. And the number of times that I've seen kids, like little kids, wandering around going, "Mummy, mummy," and I'll kind of take them and hang on to them till the mother comes along. I mean, the thing is, when I was writing the book, at first I thought that it was just me with all these stories, and then I started talking to my friends, and I found that once you start talking honestly to other mothers, and a lot of mothers don't talk honestly because we're all so concerned about keeping up appearances and how fabulous and together we are and how we keep all the balls in the air. Once you start breaking down those barriers, you find that everybody has similar stories to tell, and we've all lost our kids, and we've all screamed at our kids when it turns out they've got a fever, and we've all kind of skipped swimming lessons because it's cold and wet and we really can't be bothered, and we've all sort of forgotten to feed them vegetables for
in your case, a couple of weeks. Yeah, I'm not sure everyone would admit to that. Do you have kids, Mark?
I do, yeah, and they never eat vegetables. My kids, I've got a 6-year-old son and a 2-year-old daughter. I used to be a travel writer for Lonely Planet. Me and my partner did the Lonely Planet Fiji guide because at that stage in our lives where my boy was 6 months old, and we thought this isn't going to change our lives any, we'll just live as we used to live, but with a kid like as an appendage, like a backpack or
That's
an iPod.
So cute.
This will be no trouble at all. He'll love researching the Lonely Planet Guide to Fiji. And in fact, it was the worst moments of his until then short little life. But he got kidnapped all the time. Like if you take a child to Fiji, the Fijians just love 6-year-olds, 6-month-olds.
Yeah.
And whenever we went, old Fijian lady would take him and just kind of run off up a hill with him and disappear. Yeah. We'd go, where's he gone? Where's he gone? What's happened to our child? What's happened to our child? And they'd come back and tell us we were bad parents because the child was screaming, so I had to grab him and take him away, and, he'd have henna tattoos and black nail
hair plaited.
That's right.
Let's talk a bit about your husband, who you don't actually name in the book. He's just referred to as the architect.
Yes, I think I've given so many details away about him that we could just keep his name as a little secret because the world will know every other possible detail about him.
Well, they do after this book. And what I want to know is, when you gave him the manuscript of this book to read, which you presumably did before you sent it to the publisher.
I'm meaning to any day now. Any day. No, I have.
What was his reaction?
Look, I have to say I'm very lucky because I think a lot of other husbands, partners wouldn't be so understanding. My husband and I have been together on or off for basically ever. We first got together when I was 17, he was 19, I'm now 42. Sorry, I meant 22. Did I say 42?
You look 22.
Thank you. He's lying, everybody. And I really am the kind of person, I have been for a long time, where I'm very interested in how other people's relationships work and how other people's parenting works. And so, I'll sit down with people instead of saying, so what do you think about this weather, we're having? I'll be saying, so Ian, tell me, how often do you have sex every week? And Mark, tell me, how often do you scream at your kids for no reason? So my husband was...
Interesting that she asked me that question and you the other one. But we'll leave that one hanging.
Well, you did mention you don't have kids. That would have been inappropriate. And so he's used to me speaking quite honestly about quite personal details of people's lives because I'm fascinated with it. And then a while ago I started writing for newspapers and parenting magazines and kind of writing about aspects of our lives. Then I started blogging and I wrote very kind of personal things about parenting and marriage and friendship and sex and so on. And the book was just a natural kind of progression from that. So by the time the book came along, I think he was just resigned. I think he just knew that, there wasn't really much he could do about it. So let's just try and be proud.
And what do his friends say to him? Because, I mean, he must cop a bit of sort of mickey taking.
Yeah, he does. But look, he's very, very... He's very secure in his own manliness, so he can cope with it. Actually, that's not true. He's very he's fiercely ambitious and he's very successful in his field. And
at least he was until your book came out.
That's right, he was until my book came out. Now he's just a laughing stock. But he's actually really proud of me, and I think also that what it's important to remember is that whilst every single thing I've put in the book is true, and it is. I haven't written 100% of the truth. There's very personal things about my husband, about my kids that I would never put in any book because that's their business. It's got nothing to do with the themes that I'm writing about. When I'm writing about marriage and motherhood, I'm really poking fun at myself as a wife and myself as a mother rather than poking fun at my children or my husband. So I think that's an important distinction.
Well, when we come back, we're going to be talking to Mark Dapin about his book Strange Country, and we'll be talking more to Kerri Sackville, who's written an excellent book called When My Husband Does the Dishes. It's published by Ebury Press in Australia. But book prices here, and we were going to have to talk about this. $32.95. This is a paperback book. $32.95, which is about £23 for a paperback. I mean, it's madness. It's surprising that any books sell in this country.
That's the full retail price. You can actually get it much cheaper at a lot of the discounted retailers.
I should hope so.
However, it's you could get it for probably around 25 Australian
I went
dollars.
into the main bookstore here, Dimmock's, the other day. I spent $288, say about £200 on 7 books.
Yeah, I would
never do that in the UK.
We have a much smaller market. I would say that's the main reason. And
the market's protected against parallel importation.
Yep.
So you cannot get British copies of a book published in Australia
really?
if that book is currently published in Australia.
Right, yeah, that doesn't really work with us. Anyway, the time now is 9:17. And that means it's time for Travel with Alan Joyce.
Thanks, Ian.
You're listening to the LBC Book Club, coming to you today live from Sydney, Australia. And I've just looked at the back of Mark Dapin's book, Strange Country, where there is a huge crocodile opening its mouth. And I've just come today, flown back from Darwin, where I was in the outback in crocodile country in fear of my life. Never actually saw one, of course, but we went fishing, and I've never been fishing before, and I kept being told, come away from the water. I've never been fishing before. Why do people go fishing? I mean, 4 or 5 hours of pure and utter boredom.
Oh, my kids love fishing. It's great for me because I get to sit and read a book and they just dangle lines in the water.
Well, that's all I did, and I never caught a thing. That is the voice of Kerri Sackville, who's written When My Husband Does the Dishes. More from her in a bit, but I want to concentrate on Mark's book in this quarter of the programme. It's called Strange Country, Travels in a Very Different Australia. Now, Mark is originally from England. He's been in Australia for 22 years. And on the back of the book, it says, in Strange Country, he takes us on a journey through a very different Australia, a country that's eccentric, puzzling, big-hearted, small-minded, nostalgic, and sometimes just plain mad. I'd agree with all of that from my 2 weeks here so far. What made you come to Australia in the first place, Mark?
I came over here when I was 26 years old on a working holiday visa with my girlfriend at the time, who was also on a working holiday visa. To our absolute astonishment, my girlfriend turned out to be Australian. She was born at RAF Toowoomba, which is obviously an RAF base in Toowoomba, which is a place in Queensland. But in our mind, it wasn't a place in Queensland. It was a place in England because it was an RAF base. She only lived there for 6 weeks and actually grew up in Malta. But when we got through customs in Australia, the immigration officer said, how come you're here on working holiday visa when you were born in Queensland? We explained what he didn't know, that RAF bases were British sovereign territory no matter where they were. And he said, oh, that's ludicrous, you're an Australian. Eventually, we got married, and I became an Australian too, and left her for the features assistant at work. She now lives with my brother.
Right. Oh, no, that'd be a whole other programme.
It's my favourite story. I talk about it all the time.
So I feed Kerri her material.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you'd like some group therapy, Mark, we're happy to provide it. But let's concentrate on the book.
It's a supportive
environment. No, let's talk more about the
what gave you the idea for the book?
Partly it was the same as what started Kerri's book. I, as I say, used to be a travel writer. I used to go overseas a real lot, did the Lonely Planet Guide. But when I started to have children, I didn't want to be away from home so much. I didn't hardly want to be away at all, really. I just wanted to be with my son, which led to...
Kerri would happily sort of go for months without her children.
Not months, maybe weeks.
Well, maybe months, 1 month. Yeah, which led to the calamitous decision to actually take Benny on an assignment with us, which I mentioned earlier. Once we'd realised that wasn't really a viable option, I started just working around Australia doing various travel stories for my magazine. I work for the colour magazine inside the Sydney Morning Herald and the Melbourne Age. And I started to get interested in the enormous number of borderline insane people in Australia, particularly in rural regions of Australia. The interest kind of began with Australian micro-nationalists, who are basically people who declare their bedrooms or their bathrooms to be independent of Australia. Although they believe that they are surrounded by the Commonwealth of Australia, they don't believe that their homes are a part of it. The most famous Australian micro-nationalist was Prince Leonard of Hutt, who declared his farm in WA independent of Australia over some problem over wool quotas. And this led to this vast explosion of these people, including one in King's Cross. A guy in King's Cross declared his one-bedroom flat independent.
Which we should explain it is a part of Sydney rather than in London.
Not the one in London. King's Cross, about which I wrote the award-winning crime novel King of the Cross.
Which we might come on to a little later, if you're good.
Mentioned earlier and to be mentioned later. But after the micronationalists, I kind of branched out into urban speleologists. I think you've got them in England as well. Urban speleologists, speleology being caving.
Oh, is it? Right, okay.
But in the urban context, it's people who go down drains. Now, you've been in Australia a couple of weeks, and it
never been down a drain, though.
No, it probably hadn't occurred to you. Of all the countries in the world, we've got sunshine, we've got incredible natural beauty, we've got cheap beer. Of all the countries in the world where you might spend your evenings down the drains, Australia probably isn't in the top 5. But a fair number of Australians do spend their time in drains, in reservoirs, in abandoned factory, in various holes in the ground. I followed them.
I bet they don't in the Northern Territory, though, for fear of crocodiles being in the drains.
Well, they do kind of keep cropping up, crocodiles in the drains in Townsville and Darwin. But the more danger there is in your stormwater drains, which is the drains that they tend to go through, the more kudos you get as an urban speleologist or a drain spotter.
I mean, really,
drain
these people
spotter.
make planking just look like child's play.
That's right. They died. A few of them died here in Lurline Bay
have you had
a
planking?
couple of years ago.
Planking
I have discovered planking today, actually.
Speleology is
because there was a picture. There was a picture in the Northern Territory newspaper on the front page of a woman planking a crocodile.
No.
Yep. And we should
really
explain
smart.
what planking is. It's not some sexual deviancy,
I think it would be sexual boring. Actually,
but you explain it because I'm not sure I can.
Planking's this craze that's taken over the world, which I actually call sleeping.
No, I think it's just taken over Australia.
Okay. I call it sleeping. It's when you, and I do it all the time, but my eyes are closed and I'm unconscious. It's where you lie completely horizontal in very unusual positions. And generally take photos of yourself doing it and put it on the internet. And people have died planking. I mean, it's a very, very...
See, if I'd known about planking before today, I might have done that on my trip to Darwin I saw today a picture of a man who was planking a termite mound. Well, there's a very nice picture of me beside a termite mound on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. I could have planked the termite mound.
Should have.
I really should have done, shouldn't
missed
I?
Opportunity.
I'm not sure people in Australia know that the craze is restricted to Australia. I think we thought.
Well, I've never seen it anywhere else.
No, I thought it was around the world.
Yeah.
Well, we will talk.
Yeah.
We will talk a little bit more about planking. We'll talk a lot more about both your books in just a short while. Strange Country by Mark Dapin and When My Husband Does the Dishes by Kerri Sackville.
This is LBC 97.3. There are many.
Oh no, he's doing it.
Well, when I first started presenting programmes on LBC, not for 1 minute did I ever think that I would be talking to Clive Bull from 13,000 miles away. But that's what I'm doing now, because he's in the studio and I'm not. Clive, hello.
Hello, Ian. You're looking well today.
Thank you very much. What's on your programme tonight?
Coming up at 10, we're going to talk about tax. They've just revealed the rankings of different countries and who pays what in proportion tax. And Britain comes out as one of the highest tax rates amongst major economies. So I'd like to know whether you feel you do pay too much tax, and whether you get value for money, bearing in mind you are paying a lot of tax. And if you don't want to pay all that tax, well, what tax would you scrap and how would you balance the books? So we're going to have a talk about tax. I also want to talk about the school curriculum. There's been a bit of a row going on about what should and shouldn't be in, and there's word that things like climate change might be taken out of the school curriculum, and other slightly more controversial modern bits of science. I want to know whether people feel they're being preached at, or whether it is so factual that it should be in the school curriculum. And later on as well, we're going to talk about Facebook, because a huge number of British users have deactivated their accounts just in the last month, and I'm wondering why. Has it peaked? That's all coming up at 10.
Facebook?
You're on Facebook.
I am, are you?
No, I'm not. No. I think there's a fake Clive Bull, but no, I'm not.
A fake Clive Bull. Now,
Yeah.
that's material for hours of discussion, I would have thought. One of my guests has just fallen off his chair, which is interesting. But they're putting Christmas antlers on. Is the world going mad, or is this the normal done thing in Australia? Clive, I think we're going to have to release you on that note.
Thank you.
Cheers, Clive. Will be with you at 10. Now, I'm at a loss for words now, because Kerri Sackville and Mark Dapin, my two authors here, have put Christmas. Are they Christmas antlers on?
I found them.
Can we ask why
festive.
this would be?
Because it's 6:30
Traditional?
It's 6:34 in the morning, and I'm not due to wake up for another 10 minutes.
What have you done with your children, by the way?
Oh, my children are at home with their father,
Right.
which means they'll probably go to school very late wearing the wrong clothes and forget their lunches.
Bit of a normal day then for
Yeah,
them, isn't
pretty
it?
much.
Right, anyway, Kerri's book is When My Husband Does the Dishes, a memoir of marriage and motherhood. We'll be talking to her a little bit more in just a second. And Mark's book is Strange Country, Travels in a Very Different Australia. Looking at this book, it kind of reminds me of a Bill Bryson book, because I mean he does lots of sort of travel books, doesn't he? I mean, but I've read several of them.
I'm sorry, I've never heard of Bill. Bill who?
Do you compare yourself to him at all in style?
Well, interestingly, although I do not compare myself to him, I have been compared to him by Australian reviewers. I believe the phrase they used was, hang on, better than Bill Bryson.
Oh, really?
Yeah, took a while to retrieve it from my memory there, but yeah, better than Bill Bryson. I think probably my book is more experiential than Bill, as I call him, his book. I went round Australia. Sorry?
Billy.
B. He calls me M. I went MDAP. KSAC. I went round Australia kind of, as I say, finding these lovable and not so lovable eccentrics, watching what they did and trying to do it myself. In Australia, there's a great deal of racing. Australians love racing things, everything from cane toads, which are a poisonous plague here, through goats. I ended up racing camels, in the last chapter of that book. It was the last chapter.
There are camels in Australia?
There's actually an enormous number of camels in Australia,
Really?
because before the railways were built across the continent, and indeed while the railways were being built, a number of Afghan drovers were imported obviously from Afghanistan, along with their camels, to kind of make tracks through the desert and carry freight through the desert. Most of the Afghans ended up going home, but most of the camels ended up staying here. They bred in the wild, and now the outback is kind of packed with camels. Some people try and make money out of the camels. There's a kind of movement towards eating camel meat, but it's one of the smaller movements in Australia, to be frank.
Do people eat kangaroo meat?
Yeah.
How could
absolutely.
you? How could you? What a barbarian nation you are.
We eat our national symbol. I don't eat it, but no.
We eat Skippy.
It's terrible.
Kangaroos are in kind of pestilent quantities in Australia.
Well, I've only seen 4 since I've been here.
Were they
so
all
I
dead
wouldn't
by the
regard,
side
no,
of the road?
No, I saw some little wallabies today because we were sort of 200 miles south of Darwin in the middle of nowhere. It was like being in an episode of Lost, so walking along the beach, and there's a distant island over there. And so we had to drive back about 90 miles over dirt tracks this morning, and there were about 5 little wallabies had been killed, and that I sort of felt rather sad because they're very cute creatures, aren't they?
They're very cute. They're actually not that friendly. You can go and pat kangaroos in petting zoos, but you wouldn't want to.
Kerri, they're friendlier than crocodiles.
I think that's probably true. I think most things are friendlier than crocodiles.
So you went camel racing?
Yeah, I should point out.
Were you any
are,
good
in
at
fact,
it?
Wearing these reindeer ears in tribute to our marsupial cousins.
Is that right?
Even
That's
though mine
right.
just fell out.
Were you any good at camel racing?
No, I was absolutely crap at camel racing. I was one of the world's worst camel racers. A lot of the people that you meet in the outback, if you're me, have raced camels. It's kind of a minority pursuit among tough guys and lunatics. But because I spoke to so many tough guys and lunatics while I was researching this book, it started to seem like a normal thing to do. They go, what have you done in your life? I've been a ringer, I've been a stockman, I've been a boxer, and I've been a camel jockey. And I'm thinking, it doesn't sound that hard, And then 3 years ago, equine flu, which you appear to be suffering from.
Yes, yes.
Hit Sydney, which meant that there were no horses available at the horse racing, and more particularly at the trotting. Trotting's a sport in Australia, I use the word sport loosely, where a horse, a trotter rather than a galloper, drags a carriage around a circuit. I think it's quite popular in Belgium as well. And parts of
Australia has a lot of things in common with Belgium. You have the same voting system, I believe.
Yeah, and a large Flemish-speaking minority.
And we like chocolates as well.
Yeah, and
it's not
they
something
both
to be
begin with
proud
B.
of to have things in common with Belgium, you understand.
Anyway, Belgian comparisons aside, so when equine flu hit Sydney and took all the horses off the trotting track, they thought we've got to raise something to keep people coming to the track on Fridays.
And the kangaroos were really uncooperative.
Yeah, and the crocs were all busy biting tourists and planking. So they said, we'll run some camels. We'll get some camels down from Queensland and we'll race them with some camel jockeys and some idiots. So they had an invitational race for idiots. So is it invitational when anybody can do it, providing they're stupid? But anyway, one of these races, they said they opened to members of the public, and I rung and I said, can I do it? Can anyone do it? And they said, well, yeah, even an idiot can camel race. And I thought, well, I am an idiot. I will prove this or otherwise. And I looked up camel racing on YouTube. They had a couple of films of it, and it looked very, very slow. It looked like something that I could handle. So I got to the camel racing track, and I realised that what was very, very slow wasn't in fact camel racing, but YouTube. It was one of those slow, flickering feeds, and camel racing, in fact, looks as fast as motor racing, but it was too late to back out. Actually, it wasn't. I wish I did back out. But I put on the camel silks and mounted my camel.
There's a law against that, isn't
the
there?
race, sorry?
There's a law against mounting a camel.
I
Yeah.
don't know if this is really suitable for radio, Mark.
We've got to tell them what really happens in Australia.
It's after 9 o'clock.
Not every Australian man mounts camels. I just want to make that clear. I'm quite sure my husband has never mounted a camel.
Not every Australian man is sufficiently attractive to camels.
That's completely true. My husband probably isn't attractive enough to camels.
According to your book, though, Kerri, your husband is quite into mounting, but doesn't seem to get as much of it as he might like.
Look,
because you prefer sleeping. In fact, you would sleep. I'm astonished you're here, actually, because on every page of this book, it's all about your desire to have more sleep, and yet you've got up at what, 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning just to come in here to flog your book.
For you, Ian.
For me.
For you. I won't do it for my husband, but I'll do it for you.
Yeah, let's leave that one hanging. But why do you love sleep so much?
Because I don't get enough of it. And you know, let's be clear about this. My husband does get a chance to mount every now and then, possibly not as much as he'd like. But, you know, he's a man and I'm very tired. And, you know, I've got 3 children. I work. I run a household. I try to maintain some kind of semblance of order in my life and run a social life and do everything from the washing, the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry.
But you're not very successful at it, are you?
Look, you know, let's not exaggerate here. I mean, my kids do have clothes on their back. They're not always matching and they're not always perfectly clean, but you know, they do eat. It's not always incredibly nutritious.
They get to school 20 minutes late every day.
Mostly, but, you know, they do.
I mean,
they
God
do
knows
go
what's
to
going to happen today. Actually, they'll probably get there on time today.
They probably will because their father's taken them. And, you know, it's funny because I used to love nothing more than staying up late and reading a book or watching something on TV or, you know, surfing the net or whatever. And now I'm like one of those dollies. You know those dollies where you lay them down and their eyes close? And that's what I'm like. You can lay me down anywhere. I could lie down on the floor of this studio now and close my eyes and I'd be unconscious.
Yeah, so could I, because I haven't slept for 24 hours.
Well, you know...
But that's my fault.
That's your fault. And this is what it's like. Women, mothers particularly, you know, who are juggling so much these days, we crave sleep like we used to crave sex and chocolate, you know, except we still crave chocolate. But we crave sleep. It's what you think about and plan for. I mean, I'm already thinking, okay, I've got 2 things to do after this, but then maybe I can go home and snatch an hour's sleep before I've got to go and do the afternoon run. Because remember, your day is really short. By the time you drop off the kids at school and get home or go to work or whatever, I work from home, you know, it's about 9 o'clock. And I have to leave home again at about 20 to 3. So it's a very short day in which to fit everything from work to housework, to, you know, running out to do the shopping. And then once the kids come home, it's jam-packed and we've got to go through the torment of trying to hold my kids down to the table to do their homework. And meanwhile, I've got the little one kind of clawing at my legs, saying, "Mommy, I want to watch Teletubbies and I want more chocolate bookie." And I'm like, "Darling, you've had, you know, 3 glasses of chocolate milk already today. You know, maybe we could have something else."
What she mainly seems to say in this book is, "I want a poo." Yes,
she does do that. Since the book was written, she actually has proceeded to poo herself on the toilet, which is fantastic. But then she still needs someone to come in and wipe her bottom. Interestingly, which I find quite fascinating, she has this idea in her head that her daddy loves to wipe her bum. And so she'll say to me, you know...
That's because you've indoctrinated her.
I think I have very successfully. So she'll say, "Mummy, I will wait till Daddy comes home to wipe my bum because Daddy loves to wipe my bum." I'm like, you know what? A, he doesn't really, because no one does.
I'd be calling the social workers
and
by
B,
now.
You know, hun, really, I don't think it's a good idea. It's now 3 in the afternoon and Dad's not going to be home until probably 7:30. I think it's probably a good idea to have a bit of a wipe just in the meantime. He can wipe it again when he comes home. How's that for a compromise? So, yeah.
Yes. When My Husband Does the Dishes is Kerri Sackville's book. Strange Country is Mark Dapin's book. We'll hear more from them in just a moment. It's 9:45. We're listening to the LBC Book Club with me, Ian Dale. I've got two excellent authors with me in the studio here in Sydney, Mark Dapin and Kerri Sackville. Mark is very keen to talk about his second book, King of the Cross. And I've just opened it. I have to admit that I haven't read this book because I only knew that Mark was coming on the programme not that long ago. And I've opened the book, and the language in this book, Mark, is something to be believed. I mean, I'm looking at this page here, and I obviously can't say the word, but there are 8...
What word can't you say? Sorry.
The one beginning with F, and there are 8 of them on this one page. You should be ashamed of yourself.
That's a lot.
Yeah, as I was saying, that's more Fs than Kerry's husband got all last year.
Boom, boom. So the plot of King of the Cross.
King of the Cross. The plot is it's the life story of a King's Cross crime lord told to a person who he initially believes to be a journalist, but who turns out to be something else entirely. As I said earlier, King's Cross is the place where all backpackers come when they arrive in Australia. You do your first 6 months in the Cross and then move out to somewhere kind of 100 metres away from the Cross. When I first came, and it's also kind of traditionally the centre for organised crime in Australia. Since World War II, there usually has been someone called King of the Cross, the King of the Cross, who is the guy that runs all the rackets. All the strip clubs are in King's Cross. A centre for urban drug dealing has always been King's Cross. A lot of the hard men hang out around King's Cross. The King's Cross bouncers and strip club spruikers have got a reputation kind of throughout Australia as tough guys. My King of the Cross is an imaginary King of the Cross, but based on a real one, now passed away. And his story, and indeed his vulgarian tendencies, to the fact that he swears every fourth word, are mine.
But if I was going to pick a subject for a novel, I think I'd stay clear of organised crime because I might fear for my own life.
Well, initially I did, to be frank, yes.
But I mean,
this was a problem with the whole
I mean,
project.
if you haven't been involved in organised crime, and I'm assuming that you haven't, how do you actually get to know about it, to be able to write about it in an authoritative manner?
Well, I am a journalist, and I have met a number of gangsters in my time. I have been a crime writer on and off, and the character of a crime lord is based on a composite of all those people. What I found speaking to successful, if you want to use that word, gangsters, hitmen, standover men, as they call them in Australia, is that the best of them, if you want to use that word, are actually extremely charismatic, very articulate, and have a self-deprecating sense of humour that actually endears you towards them, but are completely sociopathic.
And then they kill you.
Yeah, then they kill you. They just do not care about other people at all. They've got no empathy. They've got no idea that their actions have bad consequences on other people.
A bit like babies, Kerri.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much like babies. I just thought he was actually talking about my toddler for a minute there.
And they also like other people to wipe their bums. And so I tried to make that character. I tried to make a sociopath who clearly didn't care about other people or have any idea of the consequence of his actions, but still had a charisma and a sense of humour.
Well, it looks like a powerful read. I actually haven't got a copy, so I'm going to nick yours.
That's yours. You don't steal from an organised criminal, mate.
Well, indeed. Now, Kerri, are you going to write a sequel to this? Because it strikes me that, I mean, your son is, I think, 11 years old during this.
Yes, that's right.
And then Pinkella, who you call your middle child,
yes.
How old was she?
She was 9 when I wrote it.
And she comes across as a lot younger than that.
No, she was, I think she was 8 or 9 when I wrote it.
Do they have a BBC comedy series here called Outnumbered?
Oh,
because
yes.
I visualise the little girl in Outnumbered as Pinkella.
This is the one. That's so funny because somebody else in a previous interview referred to that show.
Really?
And yeah.
And I thought I was being original.
Yeah, and I hadn't heard of it.
You could have just let me go on thinking
so
that.
I'm really sorry. No, that's great because obviously these sharp journalistic minds think alike. So that's
Better.
quite incisive of you. When I wrote the book, I believe my little one would have been 2, and I think the others were 8 and 10.
Right. But as they graduate into puberty, I mean, rich pickings for a book like this,
absolutely.
Isn't it?
And in fact, my daughter is now 10, and she's just started. I mean, she's the most beautiful child inside and out. She's just started doing that whole kind of weeping for no reason. She'll just get kind of all teary, and I'll say, "What is it, darling?" She'll say, "I don't really know." And I'm thinking, oh, God, it's
woman,
kind of
then.
pre-adolescence, just dreading that. I have a theory that boys, because my son, anyone who reads the book will see quite clearly, my son is very challenging. But my theory is that boys actually get easier as they get older, whereas girls, as they move into adolescence and the teenage years, get more difficult. And I'm just dreading when my daughter wants to go out and get into, a horrible boy's car and go out on dates and go out and drink alcohol and, oh, God.
Do all the things that you did.
Yes, I know. How awful is that? Already she wants to get her ears pierced. And I'm thinking, no, I just want her to stay a baby for longer. And I probably had my ears pierced at about 10. But
I see that's disgusting.
Yeah, I'm like, no.
No responsible parent would let their child have their ears pierced.
Definitely not. Well, at least,
Should we wanting a tattoo next?
Yeah, completely. My
Show me your tattoos, Kerri.
I'm not going to show him my tattoos, but I do have a couple of tattoos,
Do
and
you?
it's
I've
going to be
never understood tattoos.
It's going to be a very, very tricky one because my kids have grown up seeing me with tattoos, and there is no way on God's great earth that my kids are getting tattoos. Not a chance.
I think you'll find there is.
Yeah, and
because the architect will take them even if you don't.
Yes, exactly.
Because
no, actually, the architect has threatened me with divorce if I get any more tattoos. So he's drawn a line.
We've had
there.
an email from Clayton who says, regarding planking, I've seen a woman tourist planking in Leicester Square on one of the benches before it was all closed down. Yeah, but no, she was probably a vagrant just lying on a bench.
She was probably a mother and she was probably sleeping. She was probably exhausted.
I've got to tell you this. When I came down from Darwin this morning, I picked up the local paper for want of anything better to read on the plane. And there was this headline. It said, Darwin in the grip of winter, because obviously it's winter in Australia now. In the grip of winter, temperatures are a chilly 25 degrees. Now, I'm thinking this is positively tropical. And they're freezing.
Yeah, they're freezing there.
It's astonishing.
Oh, yeah.
And some people choose to spend time in drains, go figure.
Well, they do. But the thing about this country is that the distances are so massive. I mean, you look at a map of Australia, you look at Sydney, Darwin, think, well, it's not that far. And yet, actually, it's further than the distance between London and Moscow.
It's huge.
And culturally, it's further as well.
Yeah, it is. Yes,
I love Darwin. I was expecting sort of Hicksville, Arkansas, but it wasn't like that at all. It was actually quite a sort of
But the reason
up-and-coming
Mark's book is
city.
interesting as well is that a lot of Australians don't actually travel around their own country. I am quite ashamed to say I went to Hobart. I'm not ashamed to say I went to Hobart, but I went to Hobart
Tassie.
a couple of months ago for the first time in about 20 years, and I'd only been as a child, so maybe 30 years. A lot of Australians will choose to sort of travel, especially kind of here on the East Coast, will travel further east rather than go.
But there's quite a lot of sort of 60, 70-year-olds who get these huge caravanette things, and they will travel for 3 or 4 months at a time around the country, which I think would be awful.
Yes,
but,
when they're 60, 70. But, us young, vibrant people.
Come on, Kerri, you're 42.
I did tell you I was 22 a bit earlier. I thought that stuck. But
Now, listen, we're coming up to the end of the hour, and I've got to let you tell the great British public where they can buy their books, and you've only got 30 seconds to do it.
What you can do, great British public, is you can go onto my blog just for a read and a laugh and to read more of my work and to see the music video I made called The Meatball Song.
And what's the blog called, quickly?
Which every woman can relate to, called lifeandothercrises.blogspot.com, and there is a link to buy my book there.
That's your time up, I'm afraid. And quickly, your book, Mark.
www.markdapin.com, my website and blog. And great British people, please find me a great British publisher.
Well, you're looking at one, actually, but we'll come on to that in a minute. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme, Kerri and Mark.
Great pleasure.
This is LBC 97.3. Clive Bull is up next. I'm back tomorrow at 7.